Thank you for thank you for hopping on to this Zoom. I really appreciate it. To see a series that I've worked on during the sequester, and on and off and on and off. I think we all know that. Certainly, we were talking about that earlier. Is that it seems a little bit haphazard, but during the sequester, I made some work, and I'm glad to get to show some of it to you today. In the next 5 to 10 minutes, we are going to see some pieces that advocate for nature by celebrating it in very specific ways, some of which you may be familiar with. But to begin, we're going to take a quick second and look at a short screen share. And that screen share will take us up to the turning point, after which the pieces were made that you're going to see tonight. Okay, we all know that I'm inspired by nature. Everything about nature, seed pods, nests, shells, and my coil-built pieces incorporate actual found objects that I've continued to collect since I was very young. And sometimes I present the press molds of those same objects in various configurations. But no matter what the shape, most are what I call sculptural vessels, each with a foot, a belly, a shoulder, a neck, or a lip. But some pieces simply feature a collection of press molds of the objects I've collected, while others are recreations of sculptures of found objects or parts of found objects that are made on a different scale. But in 2018, I built Daubs of Dirt. It's an homage to the dirt daubers, those solitary wasps that create amazing nests, each wasp spreading one ball of mud at a time. Now, Daubs of Dirt celebrates the labor and persistence necessary for adaptation and survival. And to celebrate that labor and that persistence, I decided to base the form on a trophy, the Stanley Cup, awarded to the National Hockey League's champion. I added a background of celebratory bunting of hundreds of press-molded dirt dauber nests. And in front is the Stanley Cup Tower, finished in oil paint and encaustic. Now, the Stanley Cup Tower records the names of winning teams. My tower pays tribute to the richness of mud, press molds of mussels, stones, crawfish, water snakes, and driftwood. Where the Stanley crown often holds champagne, the crown cup at the top, my crown cup features a mold of my most distinctive dirt dauber nest, built around two thin exposed nails. And thank you, Jim and Patty Montgomery, for that gift. Now, the individual nests are finished in oil paint, white, to unify all of the forms in the various installations. So, as a lover of all things nature-based, I was inspired to do Daubs of Dirt. But my concern about nature's response to our changing climate inspired me to do research. And that's what I did over the sequester. And I read some really hard news and some really interesting things. And in the long run, what I found was hope. And my hope lies in nature's design for resilience. And that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today and show today. In fact, in celebration of nature's design of resilience, I thought, I'll continue like I did with Daubs of Dirt. I'll do another trophy. I'll find another something as subjects and forms become available. I'll decide if I can continue with that series. So what we're going to do is look at some more trophies. The series Bayou Platters is named for where bald cypress trees usually grow. They can grow anywhere, but a lot of times they grow in very soft, muddy, or sandy soils. Think eastern Arkansas. And what's amazing about the design for resilience for the bald cypress trees is their root system. The radiating root system of a bald cypress tree has two really interesting components. One is called a fluke. It's like a branch that grows sideways or diagonally just under the level of the soil as part of the root. Another part, or another component, is the knee. And between the flukes and the knees that repeat around that radiating root system of a bald cypress tree, they form what looks somewhat like a woven basket. Now, why is that important? When a bald cypress tree lives in an environment where there can be high water and high winds, the flukes in the knees in that woven basket tend to move with the water and the wind, supporting that shank or that trunk and helping it be resilient through hazardous weather. So, to celebrate that, designed for resiliency, I chose a trophy. It's the Venus Rosewater Dish. And the Venus Rosewater Dish is what Wimbledon awards the women's champion tennis player. Now, instead of Venus being in the center, I have not necessarily a center, but I do have one in this one. It's a press mold of a bald cypress root. What I did was find bald cypress roots over at Hendrix College in the pecan courtyard. And so I took a number of press molds of the exposed roots and of the seed pods. The platters, and I ended up doing 4. I did this one in 2019, and I finished the others in 2020. They also are a nod to Bernard Palissy, a 16th century artist and ceramicist and scientist who's known for his contributions to glaze technology at the time. But he's also known for molded, highly decorated, highly colorful platters. They were not functional, but were definitely works of art. So this is my nod to Bernard Palissy. Now, each one of these platters started as a slab. They were trimmed and put into a slump mold. I use a wok. Once they were strong enough to be handled, we call that leather hard, about the consistency of cheddar cheese when you slice it. Then I put it on a wheel and formalized the rim. And also added the texture to the platter and adhered the seed pods and the bald cypress root press molds. And of course the texture is reminiscent for the Hendrix College pecan courtyard. Now, having grown up in an academic community and having been a teacher, the year starts with autumn or fall. So in the background I have autumn, mostly in the brown and the yellow colors. Winter is the dusting of snow on the second platter. This one is spring, which is of course green and muddy, and that's the way it looks over there in the spring. And this one is for summer. And these are Bayou platters after Palissy, done in the form of the Venus Rosewater Dish trophy. The next trophy, or this sculpture, is in the form of a pine cone. The pine cone is a signifier for the potential of seeds. Seeds are my thing, seed pods and seeds. There's so much potential there to celebrate, and this pine cone stands in for those many sources. You know, seeds attach themselves to passersby to migrate another place. They go through the digestive system of an animal. They blow on the wind. Some of them don't even open until there's a fire, and they can open in order to rejuvenate a hillside. So thinking of how the pine cone is just one example of that interrelatedness between seed sources, snackers, and soils. That is a design for resiliency. So to celebrate that, I chose the form of the Borg Warner Trophy. This is a trophy awarded to the driver in the car who win the Indy 500, and they are recognized for their technology and performance. So a little bit more about how this is made. This trophy was slab built for the pedestal. The top part had a coil built base, and each one of these scales, that's what that's called, this part of the pine cone is called a scale, was individually cut and applied to the center. The wonderful thing about pine cones particularly is that you can tell who's snacking on them. If a bird comes along, they tend to just dive in and grab for a seed or part of the scale. If a squirrel is eating the pine cone, many of these scales will be removed. They're actually peeled off and some of them are eaten. However, if it's a mouse that eats a pine cone, it really strips the whole center cylinder except for maybe this little top part. This is made in 3 sections. Again, it's oil painted and covered in encaustic, just like these platters. I prefer the oil paint because it's translucent. I still can see the clay underneath the paint. And I seal them with encaustic, which is a combination of damar resin and beeswax. And it gives a very subtle kind of creamy look to the surface. Encaustic was used in Grecian times. They used to seal painted portraits with encaustic to preserve them. So this is called open, thinking of open for business with the seeds. And these are bio platters after Palissy. Now, there are 2 more of these trophies, and we'll need to go to the other side of the studio to see them. This first one is actually the heart of a pine tree. The pine tree was rotten, had actually fallen over, but the heart of the pine tree remained. And so when this was brought to me, immediately I saw that the cavity was still open, and there were 3 birds' nests built one on top of the other. This immediately made me think about resilience and the drive for all species to find a safe haven to give birth and raise their young. So in thinking about how to plan and how to protect future generations and be resilient, this trophy form reminded me of the Column of Trajan. Trajan was a Roman general, and in 113 AD, the Column of Trajan was introduced. It's 115 feet high, and its spiral bas-relief carvings illustrate the successful campaigns and battles that Trajan fought to protect the city of Rome. So much like Trajan's trophy, I simply wanted a pedestal that could let the pine tree speak for itself, like Trajan's column speaks for itself, to be a place of planning and protecting for the resiliency of a species. Logistically, when I first got the heart pine, I took out the nests and deloused them. Then I soaked the heart pine in acrylic product to protect it. And then I reinserted the bird's nest intact, including a Sargento cheese wrapper, a t-shirt tag, and a few cellophane strips that I think came from either gum packages or cigarette packages. But again, the main thing was to make the pedestal. This is slab rolled, and of course the surface comes from press molds of pine bark. I added a few details, like some pine needles around here, a little at the top. There's a partially eaten pine cone at the top, and a buckeye for luck. But the title of this trophy is called Homes, H-O-M-E, parenthesis S, indicating the homes that this heart pine tree was a safe haven for. Now the final trophy that I want to show you is made of a burl. A burl is a piece of wood that's folded over on itself, living wood that's folded over on itself due to some sort of stress. It can include a virus or fungus or something in its environment that causes it to do that. This particular burl was cut from a felled redbud tree. And in looking at it, I thought the thing to celebrate here is that this burl is like a signifier of an anomaly. It's an anomaly because by itself, we instinctively know it's completely separated from its origination. It's completely separated from what came before and becomes an object of its own. So in thinking of what to do with it, I thought of other signifiers of anomalies, of things that don't follow in terms of realistic life. Immediately thought of hunting trophies. And so in order to do Redbud Rack, that's the name, Redbud Rack, with the redbud, what I decided to do was to turn it to where it did resemble somewhat of what I would call a fantastical beast. The beard and the forelock are made of press molds of redbud seed pods. And the horns were coil built, and they were painted and sealed with encaustic, and they were painted that purple-pink color that's reminiscent or would signify the color of the blossoms were this burl still part of a living tree. This is Redbud Rack, and that's home. So thanks so much for getting on this Zoom call with me. It was important for me to put my thoughts together about the research that I had done over the sequester, and also to make work that would signify the main message I came away with, and that was that there is a lot of hope. There's hope in the natural design for resilience, and there's hope in everything we do to support that. Now, everything I make is about nature. I mean, even the small pieces that are in the on the windowsills here all reflect nature and invite the viewer to contemplate nature. But in my reading, Victor Schauberger, who's a 20th century scientist and engineer, we would probably call him an ecologist at this point, counseled in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, counseled governments and industry and investors that the best thing we could do beyond contemplating nature was to comprehend it and to copy it. That stuck with me because I thought there's a lot I need to do to think about my own resilience. And as we go forward, I don't think we'll defeat climate change. We will always have climate change. But we can work to contemplate, to comprehend, and copy nature by developing our own resiliency, intellectually, by the way we live, and the way we engage with other people. So thanks so much for looking at the pieces today. There are some more that I know I'm going to do, but this gives me a wonderful opportunity to let you know what I've done over the sequester and how hopeful I feel about the future. Now, in your chat, there's a link that will take you to a PDF that has my reading list. It also has some podcasts listed there. It also has some websites of fellow artists who work primarily with nature. Their theme, their topic, their content is nature, or they work with natural materials. So I invite you to look at those. But also, if you would like, feel free to open your microphone. If you have any questions for me, I do my best to answer them. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. We'll give it just a minute to see if you have a question. Oh, I forgot one thing. I'm very interested in artists who are also interested in exhibitions that are hopeful about climate change. So please let me hear from you, and I would love to get an email from you through my website, barbarasatterfield.com, and to look at your website and to engage in a conversation about ways that artists can come together to bring images forward and our thoughts forward that are encourage people to understand the design for resiliency that we all can copy from nature. Okay, do we have any questions or thoughts? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you again another time. Have a wonderful weekend.